Cael Klingman with Track Wrestling, and this is fun because we get one of the all-time great stories, not only in wrestling, but just in humanity. I love this story of Nick Ackerman, 2001 Division III NCAA champion for Simpson, and most noted, double amputee, and that's a big part of your story, but thanks for joining us on this Zoom call, Nick.
I appreciate the invite, man. I really do. Thank you very much.
Well, go way back, like double amputee. My understanding is that you lost your legs at a very early age. What do you remember about that early part, and how did this transpire? Why did you lose your legs?
Yeah, so I was 18 months old, healthy, young kid. I have an older brother, who's 2 years older than me, just like every other almost 2-year-old little boy running around and getting active. Immune system was down, somehow came in contact with meningococcemia meningitis. My mom, the story goes, of course I don't remember, but my mom tells me she was giving me a bath, and she sees some bruising on my legs and on my arms, and kind of questions my dad, like, what, have you noticed this? Like, what's going on with this? And they kind of get to looking at it and trying to figure out, at that time, and now having 3 boys of my own, about every square inch of your kid's body. And when you give them a bath and you notice something different, your kind of ears perk up. And so my folks did as well. And called the hospital, and they said, get him here right away. It was a pretty deadly form of bacterial meningitis that attacks the meninges in the blood, and it starts clotting in your legs and your arms, and your body starts shutting down from the inside out. So they got me to the hospital. I was in a coma for a few months, ultimately amputated both of my legs below the knee. After a short period of time after that, I started recovering, and body's immune system was able to catch up and do what it needs to do. And we got healthy, and got kicked out of the hospital, and then, kind of grew up with a new normal, right? A new normal of running around on my knees and wearing prosthetic limbs to ride a bike and run and do those kind of normal things. And that's where it all started. When
did you realize and were conscious of that your friends had legs and you didn't?
Yeah. I've always been a bit odd, and now I see it, and my kids, the same kind of weird stuff. But I always thought I was normal. I thought I'd ask my folks, like, why they didn't take off their legs when they go to bed. And the funny story that I remember, and I remember doing this, I remember breaking the legs off G.I. Joe guys, playing with them. Like, well, these guys, this is ridiculous, take their legs off. So we snap them legs off the G.I. Joe guys we play. I thought I was the normal one. I thought I was like, well, this is weird that everybody has legs. But that's just a testament to my parents and how what they raised in me. And it wasn't tell him something he's not. It was treat him like he's normal, and don't make a big deal out of this stuff. Just make have the same expectations and treat him like he's normal. And that's what they did. And ultimately that's what I thought I was. So I really didn't have a real perception of difference. Every once in a while I'd notice it. I was usually tagged. I was usually it when it came to tag. And I was usually, not the fastest kid on the playground, but didn't worry about a lot of that stuff.
When did wrestling enter your life?
3rd grade. I started wrestling in 3rd grade. Colfax, Mingo is where I grew up, just east of Des Moines. And you wrestled like most of us, and like my kids do now. You wrestle because it's fun. And I started wrestling in 3rd grade because just, it was a fun outlet of energy and I wouldn't say aggression. I don't know that I was overly aggressive, but some sort of just physical outlet that allowed me to compete and through the sport. So,
was it a natural fit? Did you pick it up right away?
No, it was awful. I was awful, and it's probably been the best tool for me as a little kid club coach and a parent, and in my line of work now is that I wasn't good at wrestling. I remember losing every match entire year. It was a big deal if I won a match. You know, the crowd would go crazy and, oh my gosh, this kid just won one match. Like, way to go. And every time I walked off the mat on my knees, they'd pat my head. When I'd lose, they'd pat my head and say, nice try. And I hated that. I was really not very good for a long, long time. So, but, you know, didn't mean I didn't enjoy it. It just meant I wasn't very good at the time.
Do people treat you different because you don't have legs?
I don't think so. I don't think so. And if I think they do, I don't notice it. Like, I'm really oblivious to most people around me. And I think that can be a flaw sometimes. But I don't let anybody else's opinion sway me one way or the other, or, you know, it just doesn't affect me one way or the other.
Well, at some level, you got good. I think you placed 6th your senior year at the state wrestling tournament. So there had to be some opportunity for you to get better in the sport. How did that happen? How did you get a little bit better in wrestling?
Yeah. You know, when I thought about this interview and I thought about you calling and saying, we're talking about this stuff, that's where my head kind of went, is at what point does that happen and what led to that happening? So yeah, my senior year in 1997, I placed 6th at the state tournament, which most people think is a pretty good accomplishment in high school. And I think it is as well, but it was a lot of work, and it was an opportunity that was given to me by coaches that didn't treat me any different than anybody else, that had the same expectations. It was the training partners and the friends and the buddies that were in the wrestling room. And, you know, when I was going to high school, there wasn't a big club wrestling, elite club level wrestling. It was, if you're from Colfax, you're wrestling in the little kids program, and that's how it was. So I'm really grateful for all those kids that either beat on me or, you know, allowed me to get better and hone the craft as I did get better. It was a series of coaches that pushed me along the way, that didn't let me slack, that didn't take it easy on me because I didn't have legs. They said, what's your goal? Your goal is this. Well, I'm going to help you reach that. I'm going to help you, make you work for it. And it was my parents that wouldn't let me quit anything, right? You have rules, like, if you don't want to go out, don't go out. But if you go out, you're not quitting. And that combination of all those people around you, man, it allowed me to get better, to let myself get better. It was, you know, it's a lot of work, right? So I grew up pig farming a lot, worked at a couple neighbor farms. And what do you do on the weekends? You lift a lot of pigs, and you're baling hay, or you're cleaning farrowing houses, or you're weaning pigs. I mean, this is physical work, and to this day, and I think I attribute everything to that, everything in my grip strength and my, you know, this comes directly from picking up hundreds of pigs a weekend to lifting them over gates and moving them where you need to be and holding them up so the farmer could give them shots. And I mean, it was, but you know, you do this year after year, all of a sudden, working concrete. I remember working concrete in the summer and swimming a ton. This combination of all these not direct wrestling that added and contributed to the success in the sport of wrestling, right? Like, so people think that unless you're wrestling year round, or unless you're doing what you need to be doing in wrestling year round, that you're not going to be successful. And I think I challenged that in how I was raised, and it was a different time. I get that, but man, if you take a break from the sport and go to hitting the weight room, or hitting the farm, or hitting the pool, all these kind of cross training activities that allow your body to not get so destroyed from repetitive stuff. And that's what, without knowing that I was doing that, you know, there was never a plan of this is what I'm going to do. It would just happen to be kind of a happy accident, I guess. You know, I don't mind a little work. I don't mind getting dirty. I enjoyed doing all that stuff, and it happened to help the wrestling goal as well.
Did you feel like all eyes were on you when you competed?
Yeah, you would feel it. I would feel it. I didn't really care. Like, it didn't. I don't know how to describe it. When you lost, you could tell people were quiet, and when you won, a lot more people cheered than just our crowd, which is appreciated for sure. But it was. You would feel that for sure, or I would.
You went to Simpson College. Did Ron Peterson actively recruit you to go there?
Yeah. My brother was at Simpson. He's an All-American basketball player and 2 years older than me. And he was there, and it's 45 minutes from home. And Coach Peterson came and watched me wrestle at the state tournament, and came to school and to our house and said, I want you to come wrestle there. The first round of the state tournament, I broke my arm in the first round against the Don Bosco kid, and ended up winning still. And I think he was the number 2 guy in the state, maybe. So I think Coach Peterson saw something in that match maybe that was like, you know what, like, I think, I want to see if he wants to come wrestle for us. And I did. And, it was an easy fit because my brother was there. I was familiar with the school. I was familiar with the team. And quite honestly, I'm an environmental science major. I like their their academic department. So it was an easy fit. And I went there to wrestle and get an education.
How did Ron implement a coaching strategy for you that brought out the best in you?
Yeah. Ron he's awesome, man. Right. He's a bit of an orchestrator for the team and for myself. Very similar to my high school coach, right? No days off, no exceptions, no taking it easy on you. I remember I thought he was the best at motivating individuals. So when I think about coaching, I think it seems almost impossible because I can get myself ready mentally. I can get myself ready, or with the coaches, we can get ready physically over time, of course. But to get somebody mentally ready and to be able to be a coach and get 10, 12, 20 guys that are all different phases of their life, to get a number of people ready that all react different mentally. Some people are really, they love the yell and scream and holler at you and get in your face. And some folks like a little more subtle stuff. Some people need little digs that are I remember him walking by doing pull-ups and him saying, this guy, Rob Murray's probably doing 20 pull-ups right now. Oh gosh, you know how much that makes me want to do 25, and he knew that yelling and screaming at me was okay, and it'd get me and get my kind of butt in gear if it needed to be, but he really knew how to push the buttons and really knew how to get the most out of me and not allow me to take days off and not allow me to short my own goals.
How did you condition for wrestling during this phase?
Yeah, I swam a lot. I wrestled a lot. And that, that's another, if you go back to what got me good in high school was all these activities that were non-wrestling related. I think the same thing happened in college. Like, of course you're lifting weights a lot. And of course you're wrestling a lot, and we swam a lot. We biked a lot. But when people would put on their sweats and they would go run, get on that treadmill or get on that airdyne bike. I did a lot of airdyne biking. Oof, a lot of that. I should try to forget that. But you're definitely getting in better shape and you're definitely losing weight. But he would also be a proponent of saying, hey, take that extra sweatshirt off and let's just wrestle. Like, this extra time wrestling is, you got to be able to move. You got to be able to wrestle, and and wrestling tired and knowing what you need to do when you're tired ended up being a huge benefit later in junior and senior year in college. Was I could wrestle tired. I could figure out what I needed to do because I'd been in that situation. I wasn't just in good shape. I was in good shape, but I could also wrestle when I was, the end of the match. So
You won the Division III NCAA championships in 2001. Did you see that coming? Did you feel like you had a real shot at winning that year?
I did. But again, I was probably alone in that. I remember that year starting end of my junior year, in the semifinals of the Iowa Conference tournament. I was beating a guy who had tech followed me earlier in that year. A guy from Luther, really nice guy. His dad was really nice. After I won the national title, I remember his dad coming up to me and give me a hug. I was really kind of a cool deal. He'd already graduated the year before, but this guy had tech followed me my junior year, halfway through the season. And then in our conference semifinals, I was wrestling and I was beating him 6-2. He had maybe had a riding time point, and I got stalling called on me, and then I got stalling called on me again, which is suspect at best. And then I got taken down, and there's no time going, and he ends up winning like 7-6, right? So this is the conference tournament semifinals, where if I win that match, which I'm winning with 30 seconds left, I go to the national tournament, right? That's my junior year. And this guy goes on, I think, to be 4th or 5th in the country. So once that happens, this gear in my head switches, and it says, you know what? I just had the number 4, or whatever it was, number 4, number 5 rated guy in the country beat. I just had him beat dead to rights, and I lapsed. I didn't finish the match. And, but what that did is put in my mind that I, in fact, can wrestle at that level, and we were preparing for that. But, anybody who knows me growing up never saw me as a really good high school wrestler, right? By the time I graduated, they were like, yeah, he wrestles and he's good. He's got 6 to say. That's a big deal. But when I went to Simpson, nobody thought, at the end of these 4 years, he's going to be an All-American or on the podium at all. It was, hey, he works hard and he's not afraid to scrap. And so I think that by the time my senior year started, the end of that junior year, that mind had switched, and I had this deep belief, and I would say it to myself, and I had this weird stuff in my head. I'm far from normal, and mentally, and I don't mean that in a good way. I mean that in a kind of a crazy way. And I started saying things to myself like national champ, and repeating that over and over, and doing those kind of mental drills that I'd learned growing up, that you got to believe it to achieve it. And man, once you say things a certain number of times to yourself, you start really believing it. And then going into my senior year, I definitely believed it. It was definitely this is the goal. This is what's going to happen. And this is how it's going to go down. And it didn't come without some bumps along the way, and then some bumps in the road, but we got it done. And probably my favorite momentum from that whole time in my life is a video, like a post-wedding video that somebody takes around and said, hey, what do you want to say to the new couple? My sister-in-law, my brother's wife, went around and she had a camera or a video recorder, and she would say, hey, Nick just won a national title. What do you want to say to him? Like, has my high school coach on there. And of course, my mom and dad, and my guys that I grew up with, went high. Colfax is a small town. You grow up with them, you're like brothers with and sisters with all those people. And, they're crying. That was the greatest match I've ever seen. We're so happy for Nick. And it was a really cool momentum that I have. But then she goes down the bleachers and she sees 2 guys that were the 265 pounders. I was 174, the 265 pounders that I lived with for 2 years and trained with every day for 3 or 4 years. And she got to them, and they were less impressed, and they were sitting there in the stands. And I'll never forget Eric Nix from Green looks at the camera, and I have it. He looks at the camera. He's like, well, you said you were going to do it all year, and now you did it, and now we have to hear about it. So what I think is really cool about that is, like, if I didn't believe it, nobody else was going to. And it was what was going to happen. Now, obviously, it could have not happened. It was really close to not happening. But you know, it wasn't a surprise to anybody in the really close circle, right? Like I remember that senior year going down to Florida and wrestling in the Citrus Duels or one of the Orlando Christmas tournaments. And I remember one of the guys was on some seating thing. I wasn't rated in the country at the time. And he said, well, you're beating some really ranked guys. Like, we'll look, we'll say, he said something along the lines of like, you might be in the rankings soon. I could care less. Like, I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. Like it's just a number. Like nobody cares about that, do they? And shortly, right after that tournament, I did crack the top 5, I think, at the time, and it was a good run, and it seems like a lifetime ago, but it was fun.
Well, there's no manual for wrestling without legs. How do you develop a style that's successful?
Yeah, that's something I've been working on the personal side after the sport now, but it's also something that, I was surrounded with some of the best, I felt like the best technical wrestling people around me. And you gotta absorb the knowledge, right? Like sometimes you go into a scenario and you might not know much about it, but you gotta just shut your mouth and listen to what people have to say and do what they say and see if it works. And I remember Corey Christensen was a senior when I was a sophomore, maybe, and he won a national title at Simpson. And that guy was a technician. And I remember him, so there were 4 or 5 guys like Ben Kalanoff, Tim Norton, Corey Christensen, Jeremy Whalen, who else? I don't want to leave anybody off this list that beat on me, but they just beat on me every day for like 2 years, right? And then some of them came back and were student assistant coaches. And they would give me, they're curious on making somebody else better too, right? So they say, well, why don't you put your hand here instead of here? I remember Coach Peterson, when I got to college, he's like, we're going to have you more upright, like less sprawled out on the ground, less flat, more upright, one hand protecting lead leg, reaching with your backhand. Like, let's change up your stance so we're more mobile. Corey Christensen taught me this ankle pick, like grab this wrist and heel pick from the inside of this, like switch your hand, like grab a hold of his wrist, switch, pull him towards you, let go and reach that inside heel. And I will tell you right now, I don't care how out of shape I am right now. You give me 5 minutes with a guy, I can take him down as many times as I want with that simple little ankle pick. Those small techniques that worked for me, that the folks around me, the teammates, the coaches around me, Ricky Schweizberger came to Simpson after he got second his senior year to be an assistant coach. Man, that guy's a technician. He would teach me these, he's a lot smaller than me, but he would give me these little nuggets of advice and different techniques that, man, you just got to try to absorb as best you can. So you're right, man. I go in spurts, right? When I have some time, some free time, which is very limited anymore. I'd love to come up with the manual. I'd love to come up with the DVD set of, hey, if you're missing one leg, this is what you do. This is how you're going to wrestle, and have the foremost technical amputee missing one leg do that. If you're missing both legs, this is what you do. If you're missing an arm, this is where you got to be. I get the opportunity now to work with little kids that are the wrestlers. I build these little custom wrestling shoes, and I've had some of them over to my house, to the wrestling room afterwards, and wrestle, their parents do, and we wrestle and try to teach them a few moves. But man, coaches need a resource. Kid walks in your room that's missing a leg or missing both legs or an arm, and poor high school coach is shaking his head like, well, what am I going to do with this kid? How am I going to not get in trouble for hurting him, or what if he gets hurt? Can I let the other kids beat on him? Well, that probably looks bad. Like, how hard do I push him? Is he really a viable training partner for my other teammates? All these things that as a high school coach, you that run through your mind, and I get it. But, man, I was so fortunate to have Coach Bolter let me come into the room and treated me like every other kid and said, all right, here you go. You want to roll? Here we go. And there's got to be a resource. I got to come up with a resource for these coaches so they can say they have something to go to. So there's a lot of us out there across the country. You see those stories every year of some amputee that placed in state or some amputee that did this or some, and they've fortunately been able to have a coach that's allowed them to make some mistakes and helped along the way, but they don't all have that opportunity.
But at the time, this was pretty groundbreaking. You won in a national championship. Like, this was new territory for the wrestling world. Like, this hadn't really been done. Did you feel that vibe that this was a special occasion for wrestling?
No. I don't know. I mean, it's the only thing I know, right? So the same way that my normal was for me to take my legs off and run across the pool deck on my knees and jump off the diving board, I can do a 1.5 flip off the diving board on my knees. I can jump rope as fast as anybody on my knees. Like, that's all normal to me. I was pretty happy because it was a national title, but I remember, I don't know. Somebody right after I won it, came up to me and he said, it's like they're interviewing and, it's a lot of press around and it's like the tournament's still going on, the upper weights are. And he came up and gave me a hug and he said, man, this is going to be the best day of your life. And I remember thinking, holy cow, I hope not. Like, I mean, like, if this is it, like, that's a sad thought. Like, it was a great day. And I mean, I don't want to understate like that. It was really awesome. And it was a culmination of 14 years of just work. Right. But, man, it's what's next, what's next on the list, where do we go from here? I think I'm excited to be a part of that. A couple of years later, what year did Anthony Robles win it?
2011.
2011. Yeah. So it was jeepers. 10 years went fast, to see that and to see his accomplishments is amazing, at the D1 level. I mean, is a whole nother level, right? I think people are going through more stuff that's more mentally debilitating than not having legs is physically, if that makes sense.
Well, I think you wrestled Cael Sanderson in college, didn't you?
I did. That was a bad day for me. That was my junior year. Iowa State came to the Simpson Open every year, and lucky for me, my junior year, I got the draw, it was fun. I'd love to do it again. Maybe not right now, but I would have loved to have done it my senior year. Not that I would have beat him by any means, but I have no problem going in and scrapping and losing. That doesn't bother me one way. That doesn't bother me one bit. I'll be the first to tell you I hate to lose. I hate to lose anything. I mean, Scrabble or Yahtzee. I play a lot of Yahtzee with the kids. Man, I hate losing. But yeah, that was a good match. I locked up the cradle, which I thought was going to be my only opportunity to score offensive points, and put him on his back. And then he just straightened his leg out, and that was the end of that, which up to that time hadn't really happened to me. I was like, oh, that was different. Felt like he had 4 hands. And it was a tech fall in the 3rd period, I believe. So
what do you say to those people that say you actually have an advantage because you're bigger and you'd be at a heavier weight class if you had legs?
Yeah, I think that's a good argument, or a good perspective if nobody has done it. Not every amputee is a good wrestler, right? It's like Oscar Pistorius, the runner, is saying, all you have to do is cut your legs off and put these carbon springs under you and you'll make the Olympics, there's been one of those in the world, it doesn't happen like that. Wrestling is a unique sport, as you are very well aware of, that you use your abilities to the advantage of you, and you figure out what works for you and try to exploit your opponents. You try to impose your will on them. And my advantages are pretty strong. My shoulders are pretty wide and I'm pretty thick and I have a good grip, and doesn't mean the short, stocky guy always wins. A lot of those, Cael Sanderson, right? Like, you don't need, that doesn't make you a better wrestler because you're shorter or you're stronger. A lot of strong guys aren't good wrestlers. You gotta figure out how to stay out of danger. You gotta figure out how to wrestle your match and control what you can control. I just remember, I go back to even my freshman and sophomore year in college, my freshman and sophomore year in high school, growing up, I remember losing all the time. I tell my kids that I coach now, like, man, I won 4 combined matches my freshman and sophomore year combined. That doesn't mean you can't have success down the road. But when it comes to the argument of advantages, I say, man, when I was going 0-4 in tournaments and getting beat up in dual meets and just losing every match, nobody said, you know what, you have the advantage. I'm not sure why you're not winning. Like, you should really be winning. You have the advantage. Nobody said that. Everybody was like, God, good try. Better luck next time, which is bogus. But nobody thought, well, but then you start winning and then people are trying to figure out why you're winning. Might have to do with because he's worked really hard. Might have to do because he's in pretty good shape. Might have to do with he's figured out how to take you down without getting in danger or put you on your back. Or I remember growing up, it was a match either I got pinned in the first period or I was pinned in the second period. Like, that was it. Like, I got to my back and you can't bridge. How do you bridge if you don't have feet, right? So think about that. So you get on your back, how are you going to bridge? So I figured out how to bridge from my butt to my back, or to my neck, the back of my head. And, but it's a lot of matches getting pinned, sore neck when you got home. Then you figure out, well, you know what I need to do? I need to stay off my back. I need to not go there. So if you can just go 3 1-minute periods without going to your back, you have a chance, so that's what takes years and years to figure out. And some kids, and I see it now in our little club, man, some kids are just physically gifted and they're really easy to coach and they're really fun to watch and they have a lot of success. That wasn't me. It wasn't even close to me, I watch my own kids, and they're all way more talented wrestling than I was at their age. But that doesn't mean they're going to be national champs, and that doesn't mean I expect them to be. That doesn't mean anything. That just means that where they're at now is a different place than I was at then. So,
what are you doing now?
Yeah, so my role, I'm director of prosthetics for American Prosthetics and Orthotics. We have 9 offices in the state. I get to make artificial limbs for people. I see patients every day, amputees that lost their leg from one thing or another, maybe traumatic accident, maybe congenital or birth deformity, or some sort of cancer or tumor or traumatic accident. Who knows? A wide range of folks come in, and I get the opportunity to make their legs. Work in an office setting, which is really a neat dynamic here, and we get to have a lot of fun and help a lot of people, which is exciting. It's almost like coaching, but you're coaching somebody's rehab or helping them, giving them a tool to get themselves better, which is really fun to watch.
How is your story still relevant? You get people wanting to talk to you and rehash what you accomplished?
Yeah, from time to time. Recently, Keith Murphy and the Without Sports, they did the Iowa list that is Iowa's sports greatest moments. I was paired up against Niall Kinnick in the bracket and lost. I suppose that's probably accurate, or what should have happened. But I hate losing. Yeah, from time to time things pop up. I give talks at schools and I talk about prosthetic stuff, and some people know about wrestling and my wrestling history, and I don't typically lead with that. They typically can tell. They look at my ears, or I kind of, I don't know. Some people know, and honestly, it's not something that defines who I am. It's part of me, no different than missing legs. It's just part of who I am, and it's a big part, but it's just another level on the deal. So.
Well, thanks for sharing this story and reliving some of these moments. It certainly is inspirational how you got to this point, and what a great story, and what Ron Peterson did there and bringing you in, and just a great environment that you were a part of. But thanks for sharing the story, and look forward to seeing where it ends up.
You bet, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate everything you guys are doing, and I love the sport, man. I'm in it at a little kid level now, and it's fun to watch, but I love to be a part of it. So it's done a lot for me. It's done more for me than I'll ever be able to get back to it. I think a lot of people feel that way. So it was tough to not see the NCAA finals this year. Even harder for the guys wrestling or not wrestling. So I feel bad for all those guys, but do what you do, and you got to take care of business and move on. So